Chosen one, why does your body ache with exhaustion that sleep cannot heal? Why do your prayers feel like they're hitting a concrete ceiling at 3 a.m.? Why, after decades of faithfulness, does it seem like God has put you on hold while everyone else gets their breakthrough? Stop, right there. Whatever you were thinking about the doctor's appointment tomorrow, the bills on the kitchen table, the children who barely call anymore heaven, just pressed pause on all of it. This isn't coincidence. You didn't stumble onto this message. You were summoned. In the last 72 hours, something shifted in the spiritual realm over your life. What felt like just another week of struggle, another sleepless night wondering if you'd missed God's plan for you, another moment of feeling invisible in your own family that wasn't random suffering. That was your final examination. You didn't know it, but heaven was watching. Angels were taking notes. The cloud of witnesses leaned forward as you faced that moment when you could have chosen bitterness, when you could have walked away from faith, when you could have cursed God and given up altogether. But you didn't. You stayed. You passed. Listen carefully. At 70, 75, 80 years old, when society says you're finished, when your own mirror whispers you're forgotten, when your aching joints remind you that time is running out, God was conducting his most important test, not of your strength, but of your surrender, not of your perfection, but of your persistence. I think of Sarah, 90 years old, laughing at God's impossible promise. That laughter wasn't mockery, it was the sound of someone recognizing that heaven's timeline doesn't match Earth's calendar. Before I continue, let me pause and honor every single one of you who has supported this message through your generosity. Whether through super thanks or simply by being here, you're not just watching, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Your support, your time, your very presence matters deeply. If this word resonates with your soul, let your heart respond as the Spirit leads. Right now, if your spirit is already trembling with recognition, if something deep inside is whispering, "This is for me," don't wait. Type these words in your heart or in the comments. I passed. This isn't entertainment, this is your divine confirmation. Before this hour ends, you'll discover why the test was hidden in plain sight, why you felt abandoned when you were actually being prepared, and why the tables are about to turn in ways that will leave your family speechless. The examination is over, chosen one. Your results are in. And what heaven is about to reveal will shatter every lie about your age, your worth, and your future. Your greatest season isn't behind you, it's about to begin. How many times did you lie awake at 3 a.m., your arthritis screaming, wondering if God had forgotten your zip code? How many Sunday mornings did you sit in that same pew, watching younger families rush past you like you were invisible furniture? How many phone calls to your grown children ended with dial tone silence, leaving you staring at walls that used to echo with laughter? You thought those were just the cruel mathematics of aging, random hardships, the natural decay of getting older in America. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter everything you believed about your suffering. Every single one of those moments was a test. Not the kind of test you could study for. Not the kind with clear instructions or a number 2 pencil. This was a stealth examination designed by heaven itself, administered in the ordinary moments when you thought no one was watching. While you were surviving Monday through Sunday, eternity was evaluating your heart. Think about Israel in the wilderness. Deuteronomy 8:2 says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart." 40 years. Can you imagine? An entire generation walking in circles, complaining about the food, questioning Moses, wondering if they'd ever see the promised land. But God wasn't lost. God was testing, just like he was testing you. That financial crisis in 2008, when your retirement savings evaporated overnight, that wasn't Wall Street greed destroying your future. That was heaven asking, "Will you trust me when the bank statement says 0? That diagnosis that turned your world upside down, sending you to specialists whose names you couldn't pronounce, that wasn't just cellular rebellion. That was God whispering, Will you worship me in the valley of shadows? Here's what breaks my heart, dear one. You've been carrying shame about those moments when you almost quit. Those nights when you whispered through tears, "Lord, I can't do this anymore." Those Sundays when you sat in your car in the church parking lot, too broken to walk through the doors. You thought those were failures, signs of weak faith, evidence that you weren't the believer you pretended to be. You were wrong. Those were the moments heaven was watching closest. Not when you were strong and confident, singing hymns with a steady voice, but when you were shattered and still choosing to breathe another day. When you were confused and still choosing to pray. When you were angry at God and still choosing to show up. Listen to what Jesus told Peter in Luke 22:31. "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail." Did you catch that? Satan had to ask permission. There were limits, boundaries. God was in control, even when it felt like chaos. The enemy thought he had you. Oh, how he celebrated when that first heart attack hit at 72. How he rejoiced when your spouse of 45 years didn't wake up one Tuesday morning. How he danced when your children moved 3 states away and forgot to call on your birthday. He was laying snares like a professional hunter. Bitterness at that first trap. They don't care about you anymore. Fear at the second. You're going to die alone and forgotten. Distraction at the third. Just give up on church, on prayer, on hope itself. But you didn't take the bait. You know why? Because deep in your DNA, deeper than your social security number, deeper than your medical records, deeper than the year you were born, something was written in eternal ink. Chosen. Job understood this mystery. The Bible says God hedged him in with protection, but when Satan requested access, God allowed it within strict limits. You can touch his possessions, his health, his relationships, but you cannot take his life. Why? Because some tests can only be passed by people who carry something rare, something precious, something heaven refuses to lose. Every financial setback taught you that your security doesn't come from a 401 kelvins. Every health scare reminded you that your days are numbered by divine appointment, not medical statistics. Every loneliness that cut like a knife through your chest proved that your hunger for connection goes deeper than human relationships. You were made for communion with the eternal. How many times did you almost walk away? How many moments did you stand at the crossroads between faith and fury, between worship and walking away? In those split seconds, while you wrestled with doubt that felt stronger than your bones, heaven was holding its breath. Angels were taking notes. The cloud of witnesses was leaning forward. And when you chose to stay, when you chose to trust, when you chose to keep breathing another day, even when breathing hurt, something was recorded in heaven's books. Not your complaints, not your questions, not your tears, your choice. Here's the revelation that will change everything you think you know about your story. Trials didn't make you chosen, they revealed you always were. God didn't allow suffering to break you. He allowed it to expose the gold that was already there, buried under decades of doubt and comparison and the world's definitions of success. Every test was actually a declaration. This one can handle it. This one won't bow. This one is mine. Right now, if your spirit is recognizing this truth, if something inside your chest is saying, "Yes, that's my story," then declare it. Comment below or whisper it to your own soul. I walk free. Those 3 words aren't just a statement. They're a prophetic declaration that the snares failed, the tests are over, and you're stepping into something you've never experienced before. But the question burning in heaven's heart right now is this. Now that you know you passed the test you didn't know you were taking, are you ready to discover what prize awaits you on the other side? You think you've been fighting alone, don't you? In that sterile hospital room, when the doctor delivered news that made your world tilt sideways. In your empty kitchen at 2 a.m., when the silence screamed louder than any argument ever could. In that moment when your own child looked you in the eye and said words that cut deeper than any physical wound. You felt abandoned, forgotten, like God had stepped away to handle more important matters while you bled in the shadows. But what if I told you that you've never been alone? What if I told you that every tear you've shed, every prayer you've whispered through gritted teeth, every moment you chose to stay faithful when walking away would have been easier? What if all of it has been witnessed? Heaven's gallery has been packed, angels leaning over the balcony of eternity, their eyes fixed on you. The great cloud of witnesses mentioned in Hebrews 12:1, your grandmother who prayed for you before you were born, the saints who've walked this path before you, they've all been watching. Even the enemy and his demons have had their eyes trained on your life, waiting, calculating, hoping you'd break. But here's what will shake you to your core. They weren't just watching for entertainment, they were watching for evidence. Evidence that God's promises are true. Evidence that His grace is sufficient. Evidence that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to quit. You've been living proof that faith isn't just a Sunday morning feeling, it's a battlefield decision made in the darkest hours of Tuesday night. Think about Job. Scripture says in Job 1-6 that the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. This wasn't a casual meeting. This was heaven and hell holding court over one man's life. And God, listen to this, God was so confident in Job's character that He pointed him out to the enemy. Have you considered my servant Job? Dear one, God has been pointing you out too. I'm reminded of Margaret, and 8-year-old grandmother from Queens. For 3 years, she cared for her husband as Alzheimer's slowly stole the man she'd loved for 52 years. Day after day, he looked at her like she was a stranger. Night after night, she'd lie awake listening to him call another woman's name in his sleep. Her own children suggested she put him in a home. You've done enough, Mom. You need to live your life. But Margaret made a different choice. Every morning, she'd wake up before dawn, sit beside his bed and whisper, "Good morning, my love. It's Margaret. I'm still here." Even when he didn't recognize her. Even when he became angry and accused her of things that broke her heart. Even when friends stopped visiting because it was too painful to watch. What Margaret didn't know was that her faithfulness was being recorded in heaven's archives. Every act of tenderness when she received none in return. Every moment she chose love over self-preservation. Every time she forgave the man who could no longer remember why he needed forgiveness. The morning he passed away, something miraculous happened. For just a moment, one crystalline moment, his eyes cleared. He looked at her and whispered, "Thank you for staying, Margaret. I love you." Then he was gone. The nurses said it was impossible. Alzheimer's doesn't work that way. But Margaret knew better. The unseen witnesses had been advocating for one last gift. Her faithfulness had moved heaven to give her husband one final moment of clarity. But here's where the story gets even more powerful. Margaret's daughter, who had begged her mother to give up, was so moved by what she witnessed that she returned to the faith she'd abandoned decades earlier. Her son, who had been planning to divorce his wife over smaller struggles, decided to fight for his marriage instead. Margaret's grandchildren, who had watched their grandmother love without condition, learned what real commitment looks like. One woman's private faithfulness became a generational turning point. The unseen witnesses weren't just observing her pain, they were positioning her victory to ripple through time. Romans 8:28 declares, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." But that word, know, in the original Greek is oida. It means to see, to perceive, to become aware of. The unseen witnesses help us see what we couldn't see in the moment of testing. You felt alone because the encouragement was invisible, but invisible doesn't mean absent. Every angel that's been assigned to your protection, every saint that's been interceding for your strength, every move of heaven on your behalf, it's all been real, all been active, all been working, even when you couldn't feel it. The enemy thought he had you isolated. He believed that if he could make you feel forgotten, you'd eventually give up. But what he didn't count on was heaven's strategy. God doesn't always remove the pressure sometimes. He increases the audience. The more witnesses there are to your faithfulness, the more powerful your testimony becomes. Right now, as you're hearing these words, can you feel it? That stirring in your spirit. That's recognition. That's your soul remembering that you've never walked this path alone. The unseen witnesses are still there, still watching, still cheering you on. If you felt abandoned by God, misunderstood by family, forgotten by the world, I need you to understand something that will change everything. Your faithfulness in the hidden places has made you famous in heaven. Angels know your name. The cloud of witnesses celebrates your victories. Even the enemy has had to acknowledge your refusal to break. Write this in the comments or in your journal right now. The trap failed because every scheme designed to isolate you, every plan to make you quit, every strategy to break your faith, it all failed because you were never fighting alone. And if the unseen witnesses have been cheering for your faithfulness in the hidden seasons, what do you think they're preparing to celebrate as your story moves from private victory to public vindication? You've been asking God for months, maybe years. Where are you? Why is everything so quiet? Why do I feel forgotten? But what if I told you that silence wasn't abandonment? What if that pause you've been dreading was actually heaven's most sacred act of protection? The Apostle Peter knew something about divine pauses. He wrote these words that will shatter your understanding of waiting. The God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. 1 Peter 5:10. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't promise the suffering would be brief by your standards. A little while in God's economy might be a decade in yours. But here's the revelation that will change. Everything that waiting wasn't wasted time. It was preparation time. Dear chosen one, you've been like a seed buried 3 feet underground in the cold New York soil. Dark, silent, forgotten by everyone walking above. And in that darkness, you whispered the same prayer every night. God, did you bury me alive? But seeds aren't buried, they're planted. And what feels like death is actually the beginning of life. You see, that 5-year-old widow sitting in her queen's apartment, wondering why her prayers for companionship seem to echo in empty rooms, she doesn't know that heaven delayed her loneliness to prevent her from settling for the wrong person who would have drained her spirit dry. The pause wasn't punishment, it was protection from what would have destroyed her calling. That 82-year-old grandfather in Brooklyn, watching his children chase success while abandoning their faith, he doesn't realize that his seemingly unanswered prayers for their return have been creating a spiritual shield around his family. Every night of intercession has been building walls of grace that will bring them home at exactly the right moment. But here's where it gets shocking. You thought the delay meant God had forgotten your address. You believed the silence meant your faith wasn't strong enough. You accepted the lie that your time was running out and your best years were buried with your spouse, your dreams, your youth. Stop believing that lie. The pause you've endured wasn't because you did something wrong. It was because what God is preparing for you is so significant, so powerful, so earth-shaking that releasing it too early would have destroyed you. Think about this. A 50-ton crane can lift massive loads, but a 10-ton crane attempting the same lift would collapse under the weight. God had to strengthen your spiritual framework before he could trust you with the weight of what's coming. Remember Moses? 40 years in the wilderness, watching sheep while his people suffered in Egypt. 40 years of wondering if he'd imagined God's call at the burning bush. 40 years of feeling like his leadership days were over before they'd begun. But that wilderness wasn't his punishment. It was his preparation for standing before Pharaoh and declaring, "Let my people go." You've been in your wilderness, dear one, not because you failed, but because you were being forged. Every sleepless night of worry refined your prayer life. Every financial struggle taught you to depend on heaven's provision. Every health scare reminded you that your strength comes from an eternal source. Every lonely evening developed your intimacy with the one who never leaves. Here's the truth that will rock you to your core while you thought you were falling behind. You were actually being positioned ahead. While others rushed into opportunities that looked good but had no lasting impact, you were being prepared for an assignment that will echo through generations. The enemy wanted you to believe that the pause meant game over. He whispered that your time had passed, that God uses younger vessels, that your aching body and forgetful mind disqualified you from kingdom purpose. But that's the voice of hell, not heaven. Heaven sees your gray hair as a crown of wisdom. Heaven sees your wrinkles as maps of faithfulness. Heaven sees your slower pace as the measured walk of someone who's learned not to rush ahead of God's timing. Your pause wasn't about ending, it was about reset. A reset, like when your computer freezes and you have to restart it to clear the glitches, to restore full function, to prepare it for the tasks ahead. That's what heaven has been doing with your life. Clearing the old programs that no longer serve your destiny. Deleting the viruses of fear, doubt, and comparison. Installing new software of authority, wisdom, and supernatural peace. But here's the urgency you must understand. The reset is almost complete. The pause is ending. What felt like forever was actually just the exact amount of time needed to prepare you for what's next. And what's next will require every ounce of strength you gained in the silence, every moment of faith you practiced in the dark, every prayer you prayed when hope seemed foolish. The seed is about to break through the soil, not slowly, but suddenly, not partially, but completely. You're about to discover why the pause had to be so long, so deep, so thorough, because what's coming requires the full weight of your refined character, your tested faith, your proven faithfulness. If this word is resonating in your spirit like a tuning fork struck at the perfect frequency, if you can feel something stirring in your chest that's been dormant for too long, then declare it right now. Type one word in the comments: reset. Let heaven know you're ready for the new operating system, the fresh beginning, the divine restart that will launch you into the most significant season of your entire life. But understand this, once you declare your reset, there's no going back to the old you, the old excuses, the old limitations. Are you ready for what heaven downloads next? You've felt it your entire life, haven't you? That invisible weight on your shoulders, that sense of being different that followed you from childhood straight into your golden years. While other kids played normal games, you stared at the sky wondering about eternity. While your friends chased temporary pleasures, something in your spirit yearned for the sacred. You thought it was your burden. You were wrong. It was your blessing. Dear chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will shatter every lie the enemy has whispered about your identity. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been carrying something on your life that cannot be bought, traded, or imitated. It is the seal of heaven, an invisible mark that sets you apart from the moment you drew your first breath. In ancient times, when a king sent forth a decree, he would press his signet ring into hot wax, leaving an unmistakable impression. That seal was more than decoration. It was a guarantee of authenticity and authority. No one could forge it without facing the wrath of the throne. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote in Ephesians 1:13, "When you believed, you were marked in him with a seal, the promised Holy Spirit." You've been sealed, beloved, marked, authenticated by the King of Kings himself. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where this truth cuts through the confusion of your past. Every time you walked into a room and felt out of place, that was the seal speaking louder than your surroundings. Every family gathering where you felt like a stranger at your own table, that wasn't rejection. That was recognition. Your spirit was acknowledging that you belonged to a different kingdom. Remember those Sunday mornings when the sermon felt shallow while your soul craved deeper waters? Remember sitting in church meetings where politics mattered more than prayer, and something in your gut twisted with righteous anger? That wasn't rebellion, chosen one. That was your seal, refusing to let you settle for counterfeit when you were created for authentic encounter with the divine. The seal has been protecting you in ways you never realized. Every door that slammed shut when you tried to compromise, that was heaven's security system. Every friendship that dissolved when you couldn't laugh at their crude jokes, that was your seal maintaining your purity. Every business opportunity that vanished when integrity was optional, that was God preserving your testimony. You've probably wondered why certain people either love you instantly or seem threatened by your presence without explanation. Why animals are drawn to you. Why children gravitate toward your lap. Why strangers pour out their deepest secrets to you in grocery store checkout lines. It's the seal, beloved. It carries the fragrance of eternity, and creation recognizes its creator's signature. But the enemy has been working overtime to make you ashamed of this mark. He's whispered that you're too intense, too spiritual, too different. He's convinced you that fitting in should be your goal, when standing out was always God's plan. The devil knew that if you ever fully understood the power of your seal, his kingdom would tremble. Listen to me carefully. Your sensitivity isn't weakness, it's spiritual radar. Your inability to tolerate fake relationships isn't being difficult, it's discernment in action. Your restless spirit that can't be satisfied with earthly pleasures isn't depression, it's homesickness for heaven breaking through your human experience. The seal doesn't just mark you for protection, it marks you for promotion. Every tear you've cried because you felt misunderstood has been stored in heaven's bottles. Every moment you've felt like an outsider has been preparing you to be an insider in God's eternal purposes. David knew this feeling, chosen from among his brothers, yet left in the fields when the prophet came calling. Joseph understood it. Favored by his father, yet hated by his siblings, for the very dreams that would one day save nations. Even Jesus experienced it. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. The pattern is always the same. Those who carry heaven's seal often feel earth's rejection. But that rejection isn't punishment. It's preparation for a calling so significant that it requires complete separation from mediocrity. Right now, some of you are feeling that familiar ache, the loneliness of being different, the exhaustion of carrying weight others can't see, the frustration of being misunderstood even by those who should know you best. Stop apologizing for the way God marked you. Stop trying to dim your light so others won't feel uncomfortable. Stop believing the lie that you're too much when heaven declares you're exactly enough. The seal on your life is permanent. No attack can erase it. No failure can cancel it. No human opinion can alter it. It was pressed into your spirit by the finger of God himself, and it bears his eternal guarantee. If you've recognized yourself in these words, if you know beyond doubt that you carry this sacred mark, then declare it aloud right now. Don't just think it, speak it, with the authority of someone who knows their true identity. I am marked. That declaration isn't arrogance. It's agreement with heaven's assessment of your worth. And when you speak it, something shifts in the spiritual realm. The seal doesn't just identify you, it activates you for the assignment that has been waiting your entire lifetime to be fulfilled. But understanding your seal is only the beginning, because what God is about to reveal next will explain why he waited until this season of your life to fully activate what he planted in your spirit before you were even born. Dear one, there's something I need you to understand about the invisible load you've been carrying all these years. You thought nobody saw. You thought it didn't matter. You thought those sleepless nights when you chose prayer over complaint, when you chose forgiveness over fury, when you chose to keep going when quitting would have been easier. You thought all of that happened in a vacuum. But it didn't. You've been walking through this life like a bridge, haven't you? Day after day, carrying weight that would crush others. The financial pressure when Social Security barely covered the medications. The heartbreak of watching your children drift from the faith you poured into them for decades. The loneliness that sits in your chest like a stone after burying the love of your life. And through it all, you carried it. Silently. Because who would understand? Who could handle the depth of what you've endured? Let me tell you about Maria. 82 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens. For 30 years, she's been the prayer warrior for her family. Every morning at 5 a.m., She's on her knees in that tiny kitchen, interceding for a drug-addicted grandson, a daughter who won't speak to her, a son who mocks her faith. 30 years of tears soaking that same spot on the linoleum floor. Her neighbors see a sweet old lady. They don't see the weight she carries. They don't see her skipping meals so she can send $20 to that grandson who only calls when he needs money. They don't see her staying awake until 3 a.m., wrestling with God over family members who act like she doesn't exist. But God sees. He's always seen. Listen to me carefully. Psalm 56:8 declares something that will shatter your heart open. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Every single tear you've cried in the dark, every moment you chose to pray instead of gossip, every time you blessed when others cursed. Heaven has been keeping a record, not just keeping a record, treasuring it. Like a parent collecting their child's drawings, God has been collecting every act of silent faithfulness you thought nobody noticed. You want to know why your body aches? It's not just age. You've been carrying the spiritual weight of entire family lines. You've been standing in the gap for people who don't even know they needed someone to stand there. You've been absorbing generational pain so it wouldn't pass to your grandchildren. But here's the question that's been eating at you, isn't it? Was it worth it? Did any of it matter? When you look at your grown children living like the world, when you see your prayers seemingly unanswered year after year, when your body betrays you and your energy fades, was all that sacrifice just wasted? The enemy has been whispering that lie in your ear for years. Look around, he hisses. What did all that praying accomplish? What did all that faithfulness get you? Stop. Listen to me. Think about the Brooklyn Bridge. Every day, thousands of cars cross it. The weight should have destroyed it decades ago. But do you know what happened instead? Every pound of pressure, every ton of traffic, every storm it weathered, it all made the structure stronger. The bridge doesn't collapse under weight. It becomes more reliable because of it. That's you, chosen one. Every burden you carried in silence, every tear you shed over family members who broke your heart, every night you chose faith over fear, it wasn't breaking you down. It was building you up into something unshakable. And here's what's about to shock you to your core. All those years you thought God wasn't listening, He was downloading every whispered prayer into heaven's mainframe. All those moments you felt invisible, angels were taking detailed notes. All those sacrifices you made that seemed to disappear into darkness, they were lighting up heaven's scoreboard like the 4th of July. Heaven has been writing every act of endurance into what Scripture calls the scroll of remembrance. And beloved, your scroll isn't thin. It's thick with decades of documented faithfulness. But the most beautiful part, none of it was wasted. Not one sleepless night, not one skipped meal, not one tear cried in secret. Because God doesn't just see your sacrifice, He multiplies it. Every prayer you prayed over that rebellious child is still working. Every blessing you spoke over that ungrateful family member is still active. Every seed of faith you planted in moments when hope felt dead is still growing in the spiritual realm. The weight you carried wasn't your burden to keep. It was your investment in eternity. And the interest on that investment is about to mature in ways you never imagined. Right now, I need you to do something. I need you to say these words out loud, wherever you are. I walk lighter now. Say it again. I walk lighter now. Because here's what's happening as you speak those words. Heaven is lifting every pound of spiritual weight you were never meant to carry forever. The bridge has done its job. The load is being transferred back to the one who promised to carry it all along. But this transfer isn't just about relief. It's about revelation. Because what you're about to discover is that all those years of silent endurance weren't just building your character, they were building your authority for what comes next. Dear chosen one, let me ask you something that might cut deeper than you expect. How many times in your life did you feel like God wasn't listening? How many doors slammed shut just when you thought breakthrough was finally within reach? How many nights did you lie awake wondering if the Almighty had forgotten your address? What if I told you that every single rejection was actually protection? What if every closed door was mercy in disguise? You see, at 75 years old, you've lived long enough to witness something most people never understand. You've watched the successful neighbor lose everything in the stock market crash of 2008. You've seen the golden boy from high school end up in prison. You've witnessed marriages that looked perfect from the outside crumble into bitter divorce battles that destroyed entire families. But here's what breaks my heart. You spent years believing God had abandoned you when he was actually shielding you. Think about Joseph in Genesis 39. Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, and when he refused, she destroyed his reputation and had him thrown into prison. For years, Joseph must have wondered why God allowed him to suffer for doing the right thing. But that prison cell wasn't punishment, it was positioning. Every day behind bars was preparing him for the palace. If Joseph had given in to temptation, if he had compromised his integrity for temporary pleasure, he would never have been trusted with an entire nation's economy. The rejection he faced saved him from a sin that would have disqualified him from his ultimate destiny. You've lived through your own version of Joseph's prison, haven't you? That job you desperately wanted but didn't get, the one where the company went bankrupt 2 years later. That relationship you prayed God would bless only to discover later they were addicted to gambling and would have left you penniless. That investment opportunity that looked so promising right before the housing market collapsed. Job understood this mystery. When everything was stripped away from him, when his own wife told him to curse God and die, Job declared in chapter 13, verse 15, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Job didn't know it then, but his suffering was protecting him from settling for less than God's ultimate plan for his life. Here's the shocking truth that will revolutionize how you see your past. The silence you hated was the sound of mercy intercepting you. Every unanswered prayer was God saying, "I love you too much to give you what would destroy you." Every delay was heaven rearranging circumstances to position you for something greater. Every time you felt forgotten, angels were working overtime to redirect your steps away from disasters you couldn't see coming. I remember speaking with an 80-year-old woman who told me she had applied for a job at the World Trade Center in 1999. The interview went perfectly, but they never called her back. She spent months feeling rejected, wondering what she had done wrong. On the 11th of September 2001, she understood why that door had stayed closed. Mercy had saved her life without her even knowing it. Right now, I want you to think about the dangers you never even met. The accidents that almost happened but didn't. The toxic people who walked out of your life just when they could have caused the most damage. The financial decisions you almost made right before the market crashed. That wasn't luck, beloved. That was the hand of Almighty God steering you away from destruction. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where this truth should drop you to your knees in gratitude. Every closed door in your past has been preparing you for the open door ahead. Every rejection was refining your character for the acceptance that's coming. Every delay was developing the patience you'll need for the breakthrough that's already in motion. The enemy wanted you to interpret God's protection as abandonment. He whispered lies in your ear. If God really loved you, why didn't he give you what you wanted? Why did you have to struggle when others seemed to have it easy? But Proverbs 16:9 declares, "A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps." You made plans, but God directed your path away from every trap, every snare, every dead-end road that would have stolen your future. Stop right now and thank him out loud for the dangers you never even met. Thank him for the heartbreaks he prevented, the disasters he diverted, the sins he protected you from committing. Your gratitude isn't just worship, it's warfare against the lies that have tormented you for decades. The mercy that saved you from your past is the same mercy that's preparing your future. And if God loved you enough to protect you then, imagine what he's about to release in your life now that you finally understand his methods. Chosen one, let me ask you something that might cut deeper than you're prepared for. In the past 18 months, How many times have you whispered to God in the darkness, "Why is everything falling apart now? Why, at my age, when I should have stability, does it feel like I'm standing on quicksand?" Your doctor calls with test results that change everything overnight. Your retirement savings shrink faster than ice in July heat. Your adult children drift further away, too busy for Sunday dinners, too distracted for phone calls that last more than 5 minutes. The church you served faithfully for decades feels cold, distant, unrecognizable. You thought you were losing your grip on life, but heaven sees something entirely different. Heaven sees demolition work. Listen to what the writer of Hebrews declared with prophetic authority: the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. This isn't just scripture, beloved. This is your current address. You're not experiencing random chaos. You're witnessing divine construction. Picture this: a master builder surveying a house that stood for decades. The foundation is solid, unshakable, built to last centuries. But the scaffolding, the temporary supports, the additions that were never meant to be permanent, they're creaking, sagging, ready to collapse. What does the builder do? He doesn't abandon the project. He removes what cannot bear the weight of what's coming next. That's your life right now. God isn't tearing you down. He's stripping away everything that was never meant to support your final season. You've been measuring your worth by things that shake: your bank account balance, your blood pressure numbers, whether your children call every week, whether the pastor remembers your name. But these were never your true foundation. They were just scaffolding, the health scare that terrified you. It shook off your dependence on a body that was always temporary, pointing you toward the eternal strength that flows from within. The financial pressure crushing your peace. It's demolishing your trust in systems that were always fragile, rebuilding your confidence in the provider who never fails. The loneliness eating at your heart. It's clearing out fair weather relationships to make room for the divine friendship that will never abandon you. Here's what will shock you. Every senior citizen who truly walks with God experiences this shaking. It's not punishment, it's preparation. Abraham was 75 when God shook him loose from everything familiar. Moses was 80 when the burning bush shook his shepherd's routine into dust. They thought they were losing everything. They were actually losing everything that didn't matter. Right now, something in your chest is recognizing the truth I'm speaking. You can feel it, can't you? That deep knowing that this isn't destruction, it's divine surgery. The great physician has put you under his anesthesia of circumstances, and he's removing everything that would poison your purpose. But here's the urgency you need to understand. The shaking has an expiration date. It's not permanent demolition, it's targeted removal. And when the dust settles, when the scaffolding stops rattling and hits the ground, what remains will be stronger than anything you've ever built in your own strength. The arthritis in your hands that makes you feel fragile, it's teaching those hands to hold on to what truly matters. The memory issues that frighten you, they're burning away the painful recollections that kept you trapped in yesterday's wounds, the slower pace that embarrasses you. It's synchronizing your steps with heaven's rhythm instead of earth's frantic race. You are not falling apart, chosen one. You are being refined. The fire isn't consuming you, it's revealing what was always unshakable inside you. Your faith, your character, your calling. The love of God that has carried you through 7, 8, 9 decades of storms. Listen carefully. When the shaking stops, and it will stop, you won't just be standing. You'll be standing on bedrock that hell itself cannot crack. The young may have energy, but you'll have authority. They may have ambition, but you'll have anointing. They may have plans, but you'll have proven faithfulness. Say it out loud right now. Wherever you are, I am unshakable. Don't whisper it, declare it. Let your voice carry the authority of someone who has been tested by earthquake and refused to crumble. Because that's exactly who you are. But this shaking isn't random, beloved. It's not just about you becoming unshakable. Heaven is preparing something that will require the strongest foundation possible. God is assembling a remnant, and only those who can stand when everything else falls will be chosen for what comes next. Chosen one. You've felt it for decades, haven't you? That crushing loneliness that sits in your chest like a stone. You walk into church on Sunday morning, surrounded by hundreds of people, yet you feel like you're speaking a different language. You smile, you shake hands, you say the right words, but deep inside you're screaming, "Does anyone else see what I see? Does anyone else feel what I feel?" You thought you were broken. You thought you were too intense, too spiritual, too different. Your own family looks at you with that expression, the one that says you've gone too far with this Jesus thing. Your children roll their eyes when you mention prophecy. Your grandchildren think you're losing your mind when you talk about dreams and visions. But what if I told you that your isolation wasn't a curse, it was your calling card? Right now, at this very moment, something unprecedented is happening across America. From the mountains of Montana to the streets of Manhattan, from the farmlands of Iowa to the beaches of California, God is stirring something ancient. He's awakening his remnant, his hidden warriors, his secret army. Isaiah 10:21 declares with thunderous authority, "A remnant will return, a remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God." But this isn't just ancient history, beloved. This is your present reality. You see, scattered across this nation are souls just like you. The grandmother in Detroit who still prays in tongues when nobody's listening. The retired teacher in Phoenix who sees angels in her dreams. The widower in Charleston who hears God's voice clearer now than he ever did in his youth. They've been isolated, separated, hidden away like coals scattered across a cold hearth. But something is shifting in the spiritual atmosphere. Do you remember what happens when you take scattered coals, cold, dim, almost dead, and you bring them together? They don't just warm up, they ignite. They roar back to life with a fire that can heat an entire house, that can forge steel, that can light up the darkest night. That's what God is doing right now. He's gathering his scattered remnant. You've been wondering why you can't connect with the lukewarm Christianity around you, why the prosperity gospel makes you nauseous, why the entertainment-driven services leave you spiritually starving, why you find yourself crying out for the old paths, for genuine power, for authentic encounter with the living God. It's because you carry something different. You carry fire, real fire, the kind that makes demons tremble and makes heaven rejoice. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. You were never meant to carry this fire alone. The remnant is not defined by numbers. It's not the largest group or the loudest voice. Throughout history, God has always worked through the faithful few. When the children of Israel were in Babylon, it wasn't the majority who returned to rebuild Jerusalem. It was the remnant. When Gideon faced the Midianites, God didn't use 32,000 soldiers. He used 300. When Jesus walked the earth, it wasn't the religious masses who followed him to the cross. It was the remnant. Small in number, but mighty in fire. And you, chosen one, you are part of this holy gathering. Every tear you've cried in isolation, every prayer you've whispered in the darkness, every moment you've stood firm when others compromised, it was all preparation for this convergence. Can you feel it? The stirring, the awakening. You're not alone anymore. Across this nation, the remnant is recognizing each other, not by denomination, not by doctrine, but by the fire in their eyes, by the unquenchable hunger for God's presence, by the refusal to bow to the spirit of this age. You might be 70 years old, sitting in your living room, thinking your time has passed. But God is saying, "Child, your training is complete. Now comes your assignment." You might be 80, feeling forgotten by a world that worships youth. But heaven is declaring, "Elder, your wisdom is needed. Your prayers have authority that the young ones don't yet possess." You might be 90, wondering why God hasn't called you home yet. But the Spirit is whispering, "Patriarch, your season of impact is just beginning. The remnant is rising, and you are part of it." If this word is hitting your spirit like lightning, if something deep inside you is recognizing your tribe, then don't hesitate. Type these words right now. I belong to the remnant. This isn't just a comment, this is a declaration. This is you announcing to heaven and hell that you refuse to walk alone anymore. You refuse to carry this fire in isolation. Because what I'm about to share next will explain why God has been positioning his remnant for this exact moment in American history. And the prophetic mantle that's about to be laid on your shoulders will shake you to your core. Dear chosen one, look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those weathered fingers, those age spots the world calls flaws, heaven calls them battle scars. Those trembling hands that can barely hold a coffee cup steady, they're about to carry an authority that will shake kingdoms. You've been told you're too old, too tired, too forgotten. Your own children speak around you like you're not in the room. The doctor's appointments outnumber the dinner invitations. Social security checks remind you monthly that society has written you off. But what if I told you that every wrinkle on your face is actually a line of wisdom? What if those grey hairs aren't signs of decay but crowns of divine preparation? In 1 Kings 19:19, something extraordinary happened. The prophet Elijah walked up to a young farmer named Elisha and threw his cloak over him. One moment, Elisha was plowing fields. The next moment, he carried the mantle of the most powerful prophet in Israel. It wasn't the cloth that mattered, it was what the cloth represented. Divine assignment, heavenly authority, a calling that would outlast empires. Right now, in this very moment, heaven is doing the same thing to you, but you can't see it because you're measuring your worth by the wrong standards. You think mantles only fall on young shoulders, on seminary graduates, on people with platforms and perfect health records. But God doesn't operate by human logic. Moses received his mantle at 80. 80 years old when God called him to deliver 2 million people from slavery. While his peers were planning their funerals, Moses was planning the greatest liberation in human history. Sarah received her mantle at 90, becoming the mother of nations when her contemporaries were great-grandmothers watching from rocking chairs. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Every year you've lived has been preparing you for this moment when heaven says, now you're ready. But here's what breaks my heart. While heaven is extending the mantle toward you, you're backing away. You're saying, God, use someone younger, someone stronger, someone who doesn't need a walker to get to the mailbox. And hell is laughing because he's convinced God's most seasoned warriors that they're bench players. Listen to me carefully. The Spirit of the Lord is upon you, yes, you to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives. Isaiah 61:1 isn't just about Jesus, it's about every vessel he chooses to carry his heart to a broken world. That granddaughter struggling with addiction, she doesn't need a counselor her age who's only read about pain in textbooks. She needs someone who's walked through valleys and emerged with unshakable faith. That neighbor losing their home, they don't need financial advice from someone who's never missed a meal. They need wisdom from someone who knows what it means to trust God when the cupboard is bare. Your mantle isn't fading, it's igniting. Every rejection you've survived, every betrayal you've forgiven, every night you've cried out to God and received silence, it was all preparation. The mantle requires carriers who understand both suffering and grace, who know that God's strength is perfected in weakness. But mantles come with responsibility. You can't carry heaven's authority and hell's bitterness at the same time. You can't speak life while harboring death in your heart. You can't bind up the brokenhearted while your own heart remains shattered. This is your moment of decision. Will you receive what heaven is offering, or will you keep insisting you're not worthy? Will you let your grey hairs become your glory, or will you die with your music still inside you? The enemy has spent decades whispering that your time has passed. He's terrified of what happens when seniors stop apologizing for their age and start walking in their authority. Because seasoned believers don't just have faith, they have proven faith. They don't just know about God's faithfulness, they've witnessed it through decades of impossible situations. If you feel the weight of this calling settling on your shoulders right now, don't you dare shrink back. Type these words in the comments. I carry the mantle. Declare it boldly. Let heaven record your acceptance. But understand this, every mantle is preparation for a crown. And what God is about to place on your head will make every year of waiting worth it. Your coronation awaits, chosen one. Will you step forward to receive it? You've been running for 70 years, 80 years, maybe 90. Your knees buckle, your lungs burn, your heart pounds against ribs that ache with the weight of decades. And somewhere along this marathon of life, you started believing the lie that crossing the finish line was about speed, not endurance. But chosen one, let me tell you what heaven sees when it looks at you right now. You are 3 steps from the greatest victory of your life. Think about the New York City Marathon, 26 miles and 385 yards of concrete, crowds, and crushing fatigue. At mile 25, when every muscle screams quit, when younger runners are passing you left and right, when your own family is probably at home watching on television instead of cheering you on, that's when champions are made. Not at the starting line, at the breaking point. You've been at mile 25 for years, haven't you? Watching your strength diminish while your bills multiply, seeing your children drift from the faith you raised them in, feeling your body betray the spirit that still burns inside you. You started wondering if you missed the finish line entirely. But here's what will shock you to your core. You never missed it. You've been inches away from it this entire time. The Apostle Paul knew this truth when he wrote in 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 8, "There is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." Paul didn't write those words from a palace. He wrote them from a prison cell, knowing execution was coming. 85 years old, alone, forgotten by fair-weather friends. But he saw something others couldn't see: the crown waiting at the finish line. Why does this matter to you right now? Because every scar on your soul, every tear you've cried in secret, every morning you got up when staying in bed would have been easier, those aren't signs of failure. Those are proof you endured to the crown. That depression that tried to drown you in your 60s, you outlasted it. That financial crisis that nearly destroyed your retirement, you survived it. That diagnosis that terrified your family, you're still breathing. That betrayal by people you trusted most, you forgave anyway. Do you understand what you've been doing all these years? You've been earning a crown that can't be bought, inherited, or stolen. A crown that transforms pain into purpose, scars into strength, survival into victory. But here's where most people miss the miracle. They think the crown is the reward for a perfect race. Number. The crown is the reward for finishing the race, period. Not finishing fast, not finishing pretty, just finishing. Look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those weathered fingers that have wiped away tears, signed checks you couldn't afford, held the hands of the dying, applauded graduations you thought you'd never see. Those hands are about to receive a crown that angels themselves would envy. That arthritis that makes opening jars impossible? It's proof you kept working when others retired. Those crow's feet around your eyes, they're evidence you smiled through storms that would have broken weaker souls. That grey hair you try to cover, it's your crown of glory, earned one trial at a time. Right now, I need you to do something that might feel foolish but is absolutely prophetic. Stand up if you can. If you can't stand, sit up straight. Look toward heaven and declare out loud, "I wear my crown." Say it again, louder this time. I wear my crown. Because here's what hell doesn't want you to know. The moment you recognize your crown, everything changes. Your posture shifts, your voice carries authority, your prayers move mountains. You stop begging and start commanding. You stop surviving and start reigning. But here's the question that should make your spirit tremble with anticipation. What good is a crown without a throne? You see, dear one, the crown was never the destination. It was preparation for your coronation. And if you think receiving your crown was overwhelming, wait until you discover what throne God has been preparing for you to occupy in the days ahead. The race is finished. The crown is yours. But your reign, that's just beginning. You wear your crown now, chosen one. But crowns without thrones are merely ornaments. And what I'm about to reveal will shatter every lie this culture has whispered about your diminishing worth. When was the last time someone truly listened to you? Not politely nodded while checking their phone, not humored you with a condescending smile. When did someone last seek your counsel, value your wisdom, treat your words like they carried the weight of decades? Your own grandchildren interrupt you mid-sentence. Your doctor rushes through appointments like you're just another prescription to fill. Society has relegated you to the sidelines, convinced you that your voice belongs in nursing home hallways, not boardroom decisions. They're wrong. Devastatingly, eternally wrong. Listen to the words of Jesus in Revelation chapter 3, verse 21. To the one who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, just as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. Did you catch that? Not stand beside the throne, not kneel before the throne. Sit on the throne, with him. Equal authority, shared dominion. Think about this image. A war-torn veteran limps into the palace throne room. His uniform is tattered, his face scarred, his body bent from battles that nearly broke him. The world sees weakness. But the king sees what really matters. This soldier never surrendered, never retreated, never stopped fighting. That veteran is you, dear one. Every sleepless night you've endured, every financial blow that should have destroyed you, every health crisis you've survived, every betrayal that should have made you bitter, those weren't defeats. Those were qualification. While 20-somethings chase influence on social media, you've been earning authority through suffering. While middle-aged executives climb corporate ladders, you've been climbing mountains of faith that would crush their ambition. While the young demand respect, you've earned it through fire. But here's what will shock you. The throne God offers you isn't in some distant heaven. It's here. Now, in the spiritual realm that overlaps your daily reality. When you pray, you're not begging from the floor, you're decreeing from the throne. When you speak blessing over your family, you're not hoping God hears you. You're exercising royal authority that hell itself recognizes. When you walk into a room, you're not entering as a forgotten senior citizen. You're entering as co-regent with the King of Kings. The world may not seat you at its tables anymore, but heaven has seated you in authority that makes earthly power look like playground games. Your adult children may dismiss your concerns about their choices, but your prayers carry more weight in the courtroom of heaven than their rebellion carries on earth. Your doctor may rush through your appointment, but when you command healing in Jesus' name, diseases must listen to a voice backed by divine decree. That arthritis in your hands, those are royal scepters that have been seasoned by decades of faithful service. That slower walk, that's the measured pace of someone who knows their authority doesn't depend on speed. Those wrinkles around your eyes, they're the crown jewels of wisdom that money cannot buy. But I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see yourself. Authority unused is authority lost. The throne isn't decoration, it's deployment. You weren't given this position to admire it, you were given it to occupy it. Right now, I need you to do something that might feel bold, even rebellious. Stand up in your authority, or sit up straight if standing is difficult. Look toward heaven and declare with the voice of someone who knows who they are. I take my seat. Say it again, but this time with the authority of 70 years of faithfulness. I take my seat. Because here's what happens when you finally occupy your throne. The spiritual atmosphere around your family shifts. Your words begin to carry weight that defies explanation. Circumstances that seemed impossible start bending to divine intervention. You stop asking and start commanding. Your throne isn't just about personal power, it's about generational authority. Your prayers don't just touch your own life, they reach forward to protect grandchildren not yet born, to break cycles of poverty and addiction that have haunted your bloodline for generations. But with every throne comes a sobering truth. Those who sit in authority are accountable for how they use it. And what God is about to reveal about your responsibility will change everything you thought you knew about your purpose in these final years. The question isn't whether you're worthy of the throne. The question is, are you ready for what sitting on it demands? Now that you wear your crown, chosen one, let me ask you something that will cut straight to your heart. What terrifies you more, dying, or the possibility that when you're gone, it will be as if you never existed at all? You lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering if anyone will remember your name in 50 years. You watch your grandchildren glued to screens, speaking a language you don't understand, following influences you've never heard of. You see your own children making decisions that break your heart, abandoning values you spent decades teaching them, and somewhere in the darkness, a voice whispers the cruelest lie of all. You failed. Nothing you built will last. But what if I told you that voice is wrong? What if everything you think you know about legacy is backwards? You see, most people believe legacy is what you leave behind when you die. But God's legacy is what lives on while you're still breathing. It's not carved in stone, it's carried in souls. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you're holding the most powerful torch in human history. Think about the Olympic torch relay. A flame lit in Greece travels thousands of miles, passed from runner to runner, hand to hand, heart to heart. That flame never dies because it's never dropped. Each runner carries it only for a short distance, but their brief moment ensures the fire reaches its destination. You are not just a runner in this relay, dear one. You are the torchbearer for something eternal. The psalmist understood this when he cried out in Psalm 71-18, "Even when I am old and grey, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation, your mighty acts to all who are to come." David didn't write those words as a young warrior. He wrote them as an aging king, feeling the weight of years, wondering if his life had mattered. But look at what he discovered. Your greatest impact isn't behind you, it's flowing through you right now. You think your children have forgotten everything you taught them. Watch what happens when they face their darkest hour. The prayers you prayed over them at bedtime, the Bible stories you told them during car rides, the way you handled crisis with faith instead of fear, it's all there. Dormant but not dead, waiting for the right moment to surface. You worry your grandchildren don't respect your values. But notice how they gravitate toward you when the world feels chaotic. Notice how they ask you questions their parents can't answer. Notice how your presence brings peace they can't find anywhere else. You are their anchor in a storm they don't even understand yet. Here's what will shock you. Your greatest sermon was never preached behind a pulpit. It was lived in a kitchen, demonstrated in a driveway, whispered during hospital visits, modeled during financial struggles. Your theology wasn't in your words, it was in your wounds that healed, your trust that held, your love that endured. But the enemy has been running a sophisticated campaign against you. He's convinced you that influence requires a platform, that impact demands an audience, that legacy means leaving something big enough for the world to notice. That's a lie designed to keep you silent in your most powerful years. The truth is this: every prayer you pray creates ripples that will touch generations you'll never meet. Every act of forgiveness breaks chains your great-grandchildren won't even know they inherited. Every moment you choose faith over fear rewrites the spiritual DNA of your bloodline. I knew a woman in Brooklyn, 85 years old, lived alone in a tiny apartment. Her children visited twice a year if she was lucky. She felt invisible, forgotten, irrelevant. But every morning at 5 a.m., she prayed for her family by name. Every evening she interceded for her neighborhood. When she passed away, her family found journals, decades of prayers, written in her shaky handwriting. 3 months later, her prodigal grandson gave his life to Christ. 6 months after that, her daughter's marriage was restored. A year later, her son started a ministry that's now reaching thousands. That woman never saw the harvest, but she planted seeds that are still growing. Your torch isn't just for your family, it's for everyone whose life intersects with yours. The cashier at the grocery store who sees your patience when the line is long. The nurse who notices how you handle bad news with grace. The neighbor who watches how you love your spouse through sickness. They're all receiving something from your flame without even knowing it. But here's the urgent truth you must grasp. Torches are meant to be passed, not hoarded. The fire in your spirit, the faith that survived every storm, the wisdom earned through every trial, the love that conquered every betrayal, that flame is supposed to ignite others. Right now, somebody in your sphere of influence is walking through the exact valley you climbed out of 20 years ago. They need to see your scars and hear your story. They need to know that what feels like the end is actually the setup for God's greatest miracle. Stop apologizing for your age and start leveraging your authority. Stop hiding your story and start sharing your strength. Stop whispering your wisdom and start declaring your truth. If you can feel that torch burning in your hands right now, if you recognize the responsibility and the privilege of carrying heaven's flame into this dark world, then declare it. Write these words wherever you are: my legacy burns on. Because here's what happens when one torch acknowledges its fire. It inspires other torches to ignite. And when enough individual flames come together in one place, at one time, with one purpose, they don't just light up the darkness. They create a firestorm of awakening that changes everything. Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred hour together, I need you to hold these truths close to your heart, like precious stones that will never lose their shine. You have passed God's test, not because you were perfect, but because you persevered. The crown of endurance rests upon your head, earned through every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every moment you chose faith when fear seemed more logical. That crown is yours forever. Remember this: your legacy is not what people will say about you when you're gone. It's the torch you're carrying right now, igniting hope in hearts that have forgotten how to dream. Every prayer you whisper, every act of kindness you show, every moment you choose love over bitterness is writing a story that will echo through generations. But hear me clearly, dear one, you are not walking this path alone. The same God who called Moses at 80, who blessed Sarah at 90, who used Anna the prophetess at 84, is still moving in your life today. He hasn't forgotten your address. He hasn't retired you from his service. He hasn't finished writing your story. And right here, in this community we've built together, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your journey. We see your scars and call them beautiful. We hear your doubts and offer our faith. We witness your struggles and stand ready to pray you through to victory. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. If God has brought you this far through every valley, every storm, every season that tried to break you, why would he abandon you now at the threshold of your greatest impact? Before you leave this sacred space, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over your life with the authority of someone who has walked with God for decades. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul who has journeyed with us through this message. Lord, you see them, not just their wrinkled hands and aging bodies, but their eternal spirits that burn brighter with each passing year. You know their fears about tomorrow, their regrets about yesterday, their questions about today. Father, breathe fresh wind into their weary bones. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are engraved on your palms. Where they feel finished, show them they are just getting started. Where they feel afraid, wrap them in your perfect love that casts out all fear. Lord, bless their families with reconciliation. Bless their bodies with strength for the journey ahead. Bless their finances with provision that exceeds their need. Bless their hearts with peace that surpasses understanding. And Father, use their remaining years, whether 5 or 25, to shine your glory so brightly that their children and grandchildren will have no choice but to acknowledge that you are real, you are good, and you never abandon those who trust in you. Give them dreams that inspire them, relationships that sustain them, and purposes that outlast them. Let them wake each morning knowing this could be the day you use them to change someone's eternity. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart today. Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Ask us to pray for specific needs in your life. This community will surround you with intercession and love. And please, share this message with someone who feels forgotten, overlooked, or convinced their best days are behind them. You could be the vessel God uses to remind them that their story isn't over, it's just beginning its most beautiful chapter. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. These messages aren't random, they're timed appointments with your destiny, and missing one could mean missing the very word you need for tomorrow's challenge. Thank you for spending this sacred hour with me. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the deepest places of your soul, for believing that God still has magnificent plans for your life. You are chosen, you are crowned, you are called, and your finest hour is not a memory, it's a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Go in peace, go in power, and go in the unshakable knowledge that your best is yet to come.